Alright, sup everybody, welcome back to the Path of Rage. We got a bit of Star Citizen news to get into, and I'm going to try a little bit different format to how I do this video. Hope you like it. If you do, let me know in the end down in the comments below. But in any case, here we are, got some background footage going on. I'm at Microtech in New Babbage, the landing zone there, and we are headed to the IAE, the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. It started on the 22nd and it's going to December 5th. This entire time is a free fly. So those of you who have been interested in the game but don't want to put any money into it, a wise call. Right now is the time. You can download it, you can try it, you can go into the game and play it entirely for free. See what the game has to offer. It's the latest build of the game, not with server meshing, not the 4.0. but with personalized hangars and all that. So this is the latest build if you want to try it. Now keep in mind, if you do, IAE and free flies always attract a lot of new players, and yes, the servers take a beating to say the least, and you won't have the best performance. It is, however, enough to give you an idea of what this game is about, kind of what they're going for. You'll get an idea of it even through the bugs. I'll put my creator code down in the, or my referral code, pardon me, down in the description below. If you guys do decide that after you've tried this you want to get in on the game, buy a starter package, use my code, get a little bit more in-game currency and some items. I get the same thing. I don't honestly know what they are offhand. It's not that big a deal. I'm not going to look it up. If you use it, great. If you use someone else's, great. You know, if you find someone else that it might help them a bit more, go for it. Again, if you want to use mine, great. But in any case, they went a little bit different this week with the video segments that they put out. Inside Star Citizen and Star Citizen Live were kind of mixed into almost like an advertisement game shows. The IAE show, they did episode 1 and 2 so far. They showed off different ships that are coming out, like the new Mirai one, which is a heavier version of the previous Mirai racing ship that came out. But they also did a bit of interview style with John Crew, the vehicle team lead. I think he's the guy in charge of all vehicles, and Rich Tyrer, lead game designer for the entire project, both Squadron 42 and the Persistent Universe. One of the things that they brought up in the first episode that I think is a very important thing is time to kill. So instead of going any further, like I said, I'm gonna play this out and then I'll give you my thoughts right afterwards. So this is what they have to say about time to kill. And I have to say that this is going to be a little bit longer of a clip than I might have otherwise clipped out to share with you guys. I've cut it up a bit. There's a couple things I've left out that weren't as important to me, but I'm going to share a fairly lengthy clip right now because I think what they're talking about here, this particular topic, the time to kill topic again, is very, very important. We're going to see some big changes coming from this. So here, let's dive in.
I think the first thing we need to talk about is moving away from time to kill and move towards time to disable. Because in the PU, ships are not always going to explode, but we want you to be in that loop of wanting to own your ship. Loss should matter. We want you to put time and effort into your ship, and that means time and effort into keeping your ship alive, and if something does happen, getting it back.
But ultimately, while we have soft death in the game right now, that's kind of a faked soft death. It's kind of just a slightly move in that direction, but it's not the full physicalized system that we've been working on for a long time. You know, when John says loss matters, it's something we need to start talking about. Well, if I have lost my ship and it does take a long time to get back, how does that impact me if I'm playing the game? What happens if that's my only ship? And I think that's where we need to start thinking about a more complex algorithm to deal with insurance claims and how you get your ship back. And then that directly ties into the TTK or TTD, time to disable, for us to be able to get these ships back. So if you think of, say, starter ships or ships that are small in nature, so like an interceptor or some of our small racing ships, those ships should be, like I said in the 1.0 talk, should always be readily available. So if you lose those ships, we don't really want to punish the player. It needs to be a symbiosis where loss matters and it needs to be impactful to your game experience, but it can't be so impactful that it stops you playing the game. Then it essentially curves up towards the more extreme scenarios. We need to have this almost agile algorithm that basically allows us to work out, like, okay, how many times have you lost your ship in the last hour? Does this player have only one ship on their account? How do we take that into account to make the player experience fair?
Obviously, single seaters have less room for options in this scenario, but really the bulk of that gameplay is on the larger multi-crew ships, where you'll be moving around inside your ship, repairing, replacing relays. The engineer will be diverting power to different systems, just to sort of give everybody enough time to decide what they want to do in that scenario. And there's so many different scenarios that can be done.
Sounds like we're building a progression here. Are the larger ships intended to last longer? They have more lifespan. There's more that you can do to keep them alive. Am I sensing this right? Is there a progression here?
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, we want you to progress in the game and build your fleet, whether that's solo or with a group. You need to be able to have some level of understanding that you're not going to lose it straight away. And the other aspect that I think is really important to see about in terms of when you say progression, it's not just progression for the TTK or TTD for across the entire spectrum of the game, or the progression for the player, the victim or the defender, or versus the attacker. When your ship is disabled, there's no way to bring that back. When we have the proper version where your ship components are gone and utilizing the physicalized damage, you can bring that ship back. And that's the huge difference. And that opens up this entire gameplay loop where you have towing and repair, and maybe somebody can repair it for you. And that's what, they've opened a nearby shop, so they're a repair shop and they give you good chances to repair versus cheaper prices than taking it to an LZ or a space station. So I think when we talk about progression, especially from my perspective, I want to see progression across all the professions. And hopefully people start to see, and it's the reason why we wanted to talk about 1.0, people start to see how all these things connect together. There's a reason why we did all these things over the last 2 or 3 years. It's not like we were just throwing a dart at the dartboard and hoping that, oh, what feature is next? We had, it's that grand plan about trying to bring them all together. But ultimately, we want to be in a position where we can start to focus and connect all of the gameplay systems. And I think this is a key part of that.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. This TDD, we're going to have to get in the habit of calling it TDD now.
So, okay, there's a lot to take in there. Talking about physicalized damage and how it's going to affect components. And obviously at the end of that, they were talking about the engineering system, which is not making it in 4.0, but hopefully shortly after. I've known that this was something that they planned for Star Citizen way back in the beginning. They wanted a more realistic thing. They didn't want ships just exploding. They wanted you to be able to repair your ships. We already have a towing ship in the game to tow derelict ships around and whatnot. And they're talking here about how now you'll be able to go back and claim your ship and salvage it or get it repaired and up and running again. Provided that the people that took you out haven't stolen it themselves, you know how that can be. But this overall as a system sounds absolutely fantastic. Don't get me wrong, I'm really all about this, but I do have my concerns. Like when they say that your components are all destroyed, but you can get them back or whatnot. Well, yes, we have component repair in the game right now, basically using a beam. I'm certain that that'll be changed and updated in the future, but we have component changes right now. But once a component reaches a certain state, from what I understand, it was my experience that those components at that point were completely useless and couldn't be repaired, and then had to be swapped out with another brand new component. Now, on a smaller ship, that's going to be a problem, right? Like, I can bring all the components I need on my Cutlass, but I have to put them in the storage area or whatnot. And if my ship gets taken, then I lose all of those components on top of it. Now, they have said that you will be able to get a AI transport back to your ship to be able to pick it up. So maybe you'll be able to bring repair components with you. I don't know. I'm uncertain about how this is all going to work. This is something that I'm really going to be keeping an eye on, because this, depending on how they handle it, this could really make or break the game. Because as Rich Tyrer said in that one section, you have to have checks, you have to have things that slow you down or whatnot, but at the same time, it can't make you stop playing the game. It can't be so punishing that every time you die to a missile shot or some just random occurrence, that you lose everything and you have to start over from scratch. And it'll all come down to how insurance is handled. This is what I'm concerned about. I like the idea. I'm excited to see where it goes and how they handle it. But until we get closer to seeing, actual programming, getting it in our hands and playing it and testing it out and sending in bug reports to the issue council, this one's a really big question mark for me. And it's going to be one of those concern areas for me. Now, in episode 2, things got really interesting. Again, this is going to be a longer clip, but I don't want to screw this up by trying to rephrase it and paraphrase it or whatnot. You guys need to hear this right out of the horse's mouth. This is discussing capital ship combat, which we've seen a bit in Squadron. Granted, that was a single player thing, so that'll play out very, very differently. However, now that we are getting the Polaris in the Persistent Universe, and I think as of the recording of that video, the Polaris will be out the day this video goes live or the day after. I'll have to double check it, but you guys will figure it out. It's the RSI day. I believe it's tomorrow, or day of this video comes out. That's the first capital ship in the game. The Idris, when it came out, you could do a lot of damage to it or whatnot, but it had like the health pool. You just had to break the shields, drain them down by constant fire, and then whittle that thing down and whittle it down, like basically just death by attrition. What they are about to discuss here, what we're all going to listen to together, is a very, very different style of capital ship combat, and this is going to be kind of epic. Let's just, you know what, again, I'm going to save it till after this clip is done and give you my thoughts, because I think that this has some incredible ramifications for overall organization and capital ship gameplay just across the board. So here, let's get into it.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for coming back. We're here for part 2 of our discussion on the life of spaceships in Star Citizen. I want to follow up on something, Rich, that you kind of hinted at in part 1. You mentioned the Squadron 42 demo several times and this experience that was being built at. It's not just a cinematic thing for the start of the show. It's actually seems to be reflective of this capital warfare experience that we're attempting to build here. So I want to ask you outright, how is capital warfare supposed to work? What are we building towards, and why should folks be excited?
I think the first thing to sort of approach is it shouldn't just be the same gameplay as small ships, just scaled up. It needs to be, we talked about progression, it should be a progression of gameplay. So you can't just turn up, lob 50 torpedoes at a ship, press the I win button and go on. You've got to remove those defenses layer by layer. So capital ships have multiple defense, obviously they have turrets on them for shooting ships. They also have PDCs for disabling closer targets such as missiles and torpedoes, and then they have physicalized shield emitters, which is what you saw in the demo where Cal Mason sort of kites a Vandal ship into it. So you need to take all those things out in progression to stand a chance against a capital ship.
So it's not not just a brute force thing. I know a lot of folks are imagining just coming in with an A2 and dropping a Moab on top of an Idris or something like this. It sounds like there's a puzzle to be solved here. Is that how you would say it, Rich?
Ultimately, capital ship warfare should be a puzzle that you have to figure out. If you actually watch that cinematic for the squadron demo, you'll notice that one of the lines is, "Hey Cal, I don't think your weapons are large enough to be able to take out that shield emitter," or that shield Jenny, as they say. And he says, "You may be right." And that is actually true. You shouldn't be able to turn up with small ships and small caliber weapons against a huge capital ship. And it's what we touched on in part 1 in terms of the physicalized nature of the damage. If I fire a small caliber pistol at tank, it's not going to do much. The reason why we have like an Ares or a Retaliator is to allow you to soften up the capital ship shield so that you can actually then get access to the shield emitters and the PDCs and the weapons that are actually keeping your fighters away. And the way that the shield faces work is that they're underpinned by physicalized shield emitters, which are then connected to the core shield generator, or in large capital ships might have multiple shield generators. So ultimately, your first foray should be like, okay, which shield face are we going to try and soften up and dampen to weaken it, to be able to then send in our a squad of fighters to be able to target certain shield emitters, another squad to be able to target the PDCs, or in case if you're taking a much larger ship, like a Javelin size, which will have flax. So you'll have to basically figure out, okay, this group or this squadron will take on this squadron will take on this.
Now this sounds awesome. This sounds like it's going to require a lot of coordination from players. Now, I really do wonder how CIG is going to basically bring that kind of gameplay in where solo players are involved, such as in the Xenothreat campaigns or whatnot, where people actually have to work together, but they may not be in part of a group. But I love this idea of having to put forth a coordinated effort to wear down shield facings and target certain systems using the proper ships and all that. This is great, because this very concept turns the capital ships into the beasts they're supposed to be. We should not be able to show up with, a dozen Hornets, say, or even like a dozen Retaliators, say, and just bam, take down a capital ship, especially the bigger capital ships. Never mind the Idris and the Polaris. Like, imagine being able to go up against a Bengal. Something that size, just like today's modern aircraft carriers, requires, specific and specified equipment to deal with all aspects of that ship. And it's going to be the same in Star Citizen for the capital ships. I love the sounds of this, but it does beg the question, how are you going to control all of this with a big group of players? And that's where they get into this next bit about the holotable. So check this out.
And this is where the hologlobe comes in terms of you're the admiral of the fleet. You're going, okay, right, I'm assigning you this target, and then if you're a fighter, you're going to then receive markers, and then obviously you're going to be connected to be able to say, okay, go now, I want you to attack now, because you need to have a coordinated alpha strike. If you just drip feed your damage over time, the capital ship will just be able to absorb it. So this is where you need to be able to go, okay, what's my tactics, what's my high-level strategy?
And that both makes perfect sense and brings the hologlobes that are in the bigger ships, the capital ships, and the Carrack as well so far, including a couple others that are coming this way. That makes this holotable, or the hologlobe, pardon me, actually useful, and will go a long way. Like, no matter how you look at it, whenever you're talking about group content like this, be it a 6-man raid in Destiny, multiplayer mode in Zombies where you're working together for Call of Duty, like anything at all that it requires teamwork between a group of individuals, there always has to be somebody at least directing the flow of combat. There has to be a shot caller. The fact that the in-game hologlobes are going to be tied directly to that we as players, say in our fighters, will be getting markers on our HUDs and targeting markers given to us by the shot color and what. That is absolutely fantastic. I'm loving the sounds of this is going. It is definitely showing up the very real fact that you are going to have an org for capital ship gameplay, or at least a large group of friends all ready to play at the same time, especially because, again, some of these ships require large ass crews. So I mean, it puts you into mind of what these battles are actually going to be like they won't be over in a couple of minutes. There'll actually be some drawn out affairs where you'll have to break through shields, to target the systems, take them all down, work as a coordinated team in order to do this, and then you get faced with the ultimate decision as to whether or not to destroy the ship entirely or board it. I mean, this is what they're talking about here is awesome, and it is definitely, again, highlighting the fact that Star Citizen 1.0 is definitely being geared towards being a massive multiplayer online game. This is going to require large groups of people to pull off. Again, this is just like the previous section we were looking at. This is a quote-unquote concern area for me, but this is going to be really, really wild to keep an eye on, because if they can pull this off, I don't really think there's going to be anything else like it on the market. Like, imagine that'll almost be like playing your own Star Trek or Star Wars experience, where your capital ship is engaging in combat. You're launching fighters, they're launching fighters, you're fighting them off, your turrets are all going, and you've got people running around on the inside of the ship repairing and changing relays and making sure that things are still working so that the ship doesn't explode. And like, just the implications of this little section are oh chef's kiss. But let's continue and hear what they have to say for the rest of this segment, because I do, as I just raved about for a solid couple of minutes, I do think that this capital ship gameplay and how it's going to affect the rest of the game is really, really important. I think this is something we all need to hear them say word for word. Again, not me paraphrasing, so let's listen to the rest of this.
Through those defenses, and then you've got your options of either boarding or destruction, depending on what your objective is.
Sounds like something ideal for a light fighter, just taking down the PDCs.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Like light fighter, heavy fighter, but you won't just be able to penetrate the shields on a capital ship because they'd be so heavy. So you'll need to use relevant weapon rate. That's where really the capital ship main weapons come in, because they're the ones that are actually doing the main damage on the shields to be able to soften it up, to allow their fighters and support ships. You can't just roll up and just try and out DPS it. I mean, you can, but you're rolling the dice. Is my ship, capital ship, going to be better than your capital ship? Am I going to be able to maneuver it well? Because that's the one thing to discuss about shield emitters. Right now, you have a shield generator that kind of creates a bubble, and we say, okay, this is this face, right face, left wing. And if you look at the wing, if you shoot the wing from the front and it hits the front of the wing, we just automatically work out like, okay, is that the front face or is that the left face? And for the player, that's not super obvious. So you want to be in understanding like, okay, well, the shield actually hugs the ship. So we need to know, well, actually that's the left face. So you as a player can go, right, that's what we're targeting, that's what we need to bring down. Because otherwise these shield generators are so powerful on capital ships, they'll just be coming back.
And throughout all of that, we've sort of assumed that the target ship is just sat there.
Absolutely.
And you have the opposite, like you're on the ship.
The defender is spinning the ship around, trying to put trying to put their stronger side towards the attacker.
You're seeing all this fire coming to this side, so you're now trying to maneuver yourself to avoid that. Counter players, they're trying to take out your thrusters to stop you maneuvering, so it is a big puzzle.
So shields down, PDCs cleared. And that's where this can go from a ship versus ship to a combined arms.
Absolutely.
Thing, which is really what's most exciting to me, this idea that you now have to send troops over to breach, and board the ship.
Yep.
Yeah, and also you might have to defend against being boarded. So if you're going up against another player, and they've got a Polaris and you've got a Polaris, or when we add the Idris into the game and you're coming up, then you're going to have different mixes of gameplay when you're fighting over whether it's resources, station warfare, all the things that we've discussed previously. We've not really got to end game yet. Yeah. We're still really at mid game. End game is fleet battles and being able to utilize these large ships, and then that comes back to TTD if you do lose, or you need salvage, or you need repair, or you need to rescue the people that are still on the ship. These types of battles, these types of combat add and are underpinned by so much more gameplay than what we've just discussed today. And I think that's where it starts to connect the loops.
Again, loving the sound of that. One thing that I really want to point out from this last section, again, the stuff about the progression of how to take down a capital ship and needing other capital ships to take out capital ships and all of that, that's great. But the part where they were talking about having to board and having to defend against boarding and pick up survivors and all that, and touching on other gameplay, that right there, in my mind, it offers an answer, a beginning answer to the question that you hear and you know online and you see in the forums so often is, why would I want to serve as a crew on someone else's ship? Well, there you have it right there. You can have practically any style of gameplay that Star Citizen has to offer through these capital ship battles. Say you're somebody like me. I am, full disclosure, not a fantastic combat pilot. I'm just not. Mainly because I don't put a lot of time and effort into learning the combat systems right now when they're changing so constantly. As a matter of fact, even though I'm Evocati, I barely test those things. There are other people who are far more focused on ship weapons and balance and all that. Kudos to them, let them go nuts. I'll learn how the combat system works when it's finalized, right? But I highly doubt I'll ever be a top tier pilot in Star Citizen. I'm not going to be getting the dual joysticks and all that. Like, people will have device advantages and whatnot. But even though I'm not the best pilot, maybe I end up in this game being really good at FPS combat because I play a lot of shooters. Well, here we go. I can jump onto somebody's ship, serve as a gunner, help out as an engineer until the moment we get boarded, if we do. And at that point, I pull out my gun and I go to work doing what I do best. Or say you're somebody who wants to get in on the medical gameplay. Well, then you're the one out there jumping in with a Metapin or any kind of medical vehicle, the Cutlass Red, trying to rescue whoever's floating in the debris, all while the battle rages on around you. This is epic stuff. This is the kind of thing that got me excited in this project in the first place. Again, I've said it before, I'll say it till the game comes out. I'll believe it when I see it. I've backed it because I want to play the single player. I have not put tons of money. I've not bought any more stuff in this game than the cost of a basic video game, and I won't. Maybe after it comes out, if they really did a good job. But that's the reason why I backed, is this vision, this idea of this is what we want to do, and yes, we're actively working towards it. I know it's been going on for 10 years. I want to see it. I want to see this happen. I want to have that gameplay experience and then sit back after I'm done and go, wow, I have never played anything like that before. I don't know. I think it's going to be cool. I thought these were 2 really good episodes. I'm going to leave it at that. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Sound off in the comments below what you think about this kind of format. I find this is a little easier for me to do. And until next time, I've been Rayjet Games, and I'll see you in the verse. Bye-bye.